Next, a few words from us about once. Well, Laura.
I am going to make this short because it's going to be an awesome presentation today. I'm so excited. I am actually here to represent the GFWC Club. So that's the, as I may know, General Federation. Very good. International group, and it goes way back to the 1800s. So why am I here? I'm actually the treasurer. And with my job at Chi-Chi's as a community liaison, I was introduced to these ladies that are amazing. They live the volunteer spirit, and a lot of you might know them. This past year, they have volunteered over 18,000 hours in the community. They give out many, many grants. I think Salty Science was a recipient a while back. They do amazing things. They volunteer at Chi-Chi's, and it's the first time I've had a volunteer group that had a wait list who want to come and help. Never had that. But these ladies, we have retired, we have business ladies, and they're amazing with what they do for the schools. For any type of nonprofit, we gave out over $30,000 worth of grants and scholarships last year to local nonprofits. I'm starting to talk to some that need to fill out. We're in our little time frame that we're doing $2,000 grants, several of them this year. So get online on our website. And if you're a nonprofit, it's amazing. But if anybody wants to hear more about us, please come talk to us. I'm the money person, so I will put you in touch with the ones that you need any help. But thank you.
Next, we had the benefit of a presentation from our Dunedin Chamber teammates. Thanks.
All right, good morning, everyone. How's everyone? Good. Thank you for having me. My name is Katie Ducharme-Persisi, and I'm the chair of the Chamber of Commerce here in Dunedin. I am also the chair of the Chamber of Commerce Education Foundation. I'm delighted to speak with you this morning to talk about our remarkable work with the Dunedin Chamber of Commerce Education Foundation and the ways we are celebrating the incredible educators and schools within our Dunedin community. This past week, in honor of Teachers Week, we had the pleasure of providing breakfast to 10 schools throughout Dunedin. Thanks to the generosity of the City of Dunedin, local businesses, and the Toronto Blue Jays, over 700 teachers were treated with a special morning meal that included gifts and tickets to the Blue Jays games for all of the teachers and staffs in all of the schools. This initiative was our small way of expressing immense gratitude for the tireless efforts and unwavering commitment these educators show every day. Our celebrations don't stop there. I'm thrilled to announce that in January, we will be hosting our annual Teachers Breakfast again at the Dunedin Country Club. This event will honor our A-rated schools and present the prestigious Apple Awards to all of those schools and teachers. It's a momentous occasion. We're recognizing excellence in education and celebrating achievements for our outstanding teachers in this community. Additionally, I would like to highlight the wonderful support we just received from the Toronto Blue Jays. Recently, they auctioned off jerseys at one of their games and raised nearly $5,000 for our education foundation. These funds will significantly benefit our foundation, enabling us to put together scholarship programs, support our teachers' breakfasts, and provide more resources to the schools within our community. Our efforts to support and celebrate teachers and schools are rooted in the belief that education is the cornerstone of our community's future. By acknowledging and rewarding the hard work of our educators, we are investing in the potential of our children and prosperity here in Dunedin. Thank you to everyone in this room. We have some of our board here with us today and some of the sponsors that have helped us. Your support is invaluable, and together we're making a lasting impression in our community. As we continue to celebrate and uplift educators, we kindly ask if you'd like to support or donate or volunteer, please reach out to me at chair@dunedinfl.com, or you can pretty much easily find me anywhere. Just type in my name. So thank you so much for letting me talk today, and thank you for your continuing support for our education in this community. Thank you.
Next up, we're gonna hear some of the wonderful things that are happening in our delightful city. Commissioner Walker, share some of that information with us. So I have the absolutely unenviable task of standing between you and possibly one of the greatest presentations we get. Dr. Chantale Be. We've had an opportunity to see this at Rotary, and we are in for a treat. You know, it is absolutely wonderful to live in the great city of Dunedin. Agree with me? Yeah. So last night we had the pleasure of attending the Salty Be Clearwater Besties. That event is intended to recognize Pinellas region businesses, municipalities, organizations for best in show topics. I am absolutely proud to announce that Dunedin fared very well last night. First of all, for best strollability, Dunedin received the vote, and also won the award for best dog hangout. Oh, that really is a nice category. Can I get members of the city, the Chamber of Commerce, visit Dunedin, St. Pete, Clearwater, stand up real quick. Yeah, those kind of awards, that there's a lot that goes on into getting those, and the marketing and communication, I think, was admirable. Another big winner last night was Fenway, our very own Fenway Hotel. Fenway was awarded the best rooftop bar and the best boutique hotel. So other Dunedin businesses that were nominated include Crown and Wool, House of Beer, the Nest at Car, Casatina, Black Pearl, and Caladesi Island and Honeymoon State Park in the best beach category. Now, I am going to take exception here to the awardee of best beach, and here's why. Caladesi consistently in Dr. Beach's top 10. Everybody know who Dr. Beach's is? Okay. All right. Very renowned, very knowledgeable person in that field. Honeymoon Island is the most visited state park in the state of Florida. So I just don't know how we did, but I'm not going to protest this year. All right, getting into other updates. First of all, we concluded a very successful spring training season with the highest number of visitors exceeding our pre-COVID numbers. Gregory shared with me before the meeting here that in the month of March, the city of Dunedin generated $14.6 million in bed tax, and that is a record. So I have to say, well done. We are embarking upon another very exciting Dunedin Blue Jay season, and the weeks and months that ahead of us basically will start the 2025 budget discussions. So in terms of process, just a few things to be aware of. There are three things that we principally reviewed. One is the output of the citizen survey, which concluded in April. The other is our ongoing capital improvement plan, and the other one is our business process initiatives. And where we're going to take a look at the requirements that are on those lists to make decisions, to validate them, and basically prioritize them. Some key dates, the commission will be briefed on the output of the citizen survey on Tuesday, June 4th. That will be followed immediately by the first commission budget workshop on Wednesday, June 5th. The second budget workshop, Monday, July 15th. There will be a public hearing on Tuesday, September 3rd. And as a reminder, all of these meetings are open to the public. And just a word, community feedback is the very most important part of this process. Updates on other projects, Dunedin golf course renovation, restoring the course back to the original Donald Ross standard, is well underway. In fact, we are ahead of schedule, still projected to reopen later this year. Another very ambitious project that we are in process is the Dunedin Marina Master Plan. This is a very complicated process, just due plainly to the scope of it. There's a lot of stuff that is being evaluated with regards to the next steps for the marina. We held a public hearing on April 30th. The commission and the Marina Advisory Committee was briefed within the last week. So we have sent direction back to the consultants to refine these concepts, and we will be hoping to see those back for public and commission feedback. Another great project is the Florida Department of Transportation Skinner Boulevard Improvement Project. As you recall, this project was initiated specifically to bring the stretch of Skinner from Bass to Alt 19 aesthetically and functionally into the downtown core. And you're probably wondering, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that we will be slowing the traffic down. We will be slowing the traffic down through roundabouts, and we will also reduce the lanes from 4 to 2. And what that is going to provide is the ability for multimodal walkability, bike traffic in that area. And we are already starting to see some significant benefits of this. We're seeing business growth in that area, and I can only assume more to follow. Next one, parking. Parking continues to be a challenge, but the steps that we have taken in the last year specifically to alleviate the parking problem has been, I'm sure you saw the little golf carts owned and operated by Freebie riding around town from late last year to just it'll actually go through this month. That's called the Looper Pilot Project, and by all accounts, it was a huge success. So what we are doing now, the city staff is reviewing the data, the analytics that come out of it, provide some recommendations to the commission, and we will be talking about our go-forward plan on the Looper for the future. Another project that we have ongoing, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be reviewing the design criteria with eventual contract award for the downtown parking garage. The parking garage is located corner of Douglas and Scotland. And the parking, I've received a lot of comments, both for and against. But I do want to provide just 3 things on why I believe this parking garage is necessary. First and foremost, Ocean Optics. I'm sure you're all aware that property sold about 1.5 years ago. And with that, the developer has not provided any sort of direction or decision in terms of what their intentions are. And so we have to be planning for the fact that if parking is not entirely eliminated, we're going to lose a lot of parking spots in that Ocean Optics lot. That leads me to my second reason. We need to be masters of our own domain, if you will, in the parking arena. Currently, we really need to reduce our dependence on leased parking. So we will own and operate that parking garage, and that's the plan. And the other great thing about the parking garage, it will be funded entirely by CRA. How many of you knew that pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the nation? Well, guess what? We approved 8 to 10 pickleball courts to be located at Eagle Scout Park. And the construction will be, if it hasn't started, will be started very soon and expected to conclude later this summer. All right, finally, and then I'll get off the stage because I've been talking way too much. As your elected representatives, we have several responsibilities in this process. First and foremost, we work for you. And we have a responsibility to you to represent the community interest in the very best and most responsible way possible. One of the things that is so unique about our great city of Dunedin is the engagement of our residents and our business community. This is how the process works, and I am proud to be a representative on the Dunedin City Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. By the way, Jorge, did I mention you before? Okay, I was sitting there on the ground. Okay, anyway, rather than me speak, Chantale will be coming up here, but I just want to say, go to their website, saltyscience.org. And this is where I got the resumes of 4 of the women there, but what they're doing, it's fantastic. All I'll say, she's a professor at USF, has been to 3 universities in Nova Scotia, in British Columbia, and Quebec, where she was born and raised in Quebec. So without further ado, Chantale, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. We actually, I'm here and we're good.
He's sitting up there where you are.
All right, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I was here last year. It's so nice to come back a year later. So last year I was talking about this crazy thing I was preparing for, and it's so cool to come back a year later and talk about how it really was. Just go right from the start here. Okay, right. So, and I know some of you were at the Rotary Club a few weeks ago. This is going to be somewhat similar presentation, but this is all about salty science. By the way, our website is amazing. My friends Rochella and Kyle Thiel at Visual Realm did it for us. So if you think the website is awesome and your website needs an update, they're great people to go to. Local people in Ozona. So salty science, we're a group of marine biologists. What we did is we rowed across an ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, for the oceans. We were raising money for marine conservation. And this is our boat, Emma, the 4 of us practicing in La Gomera at the start line. Here we go. So here's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about who I am, who salty science is, how we prepared for this. Then we're going to go into the crossing, how it really was, the finish, which was a really intense experience. And hopefully we'll have a few minutes for questions. I know this is a quick meeting, and so I'm going to do the quick presentation, short some of the videos, and hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end. So this is my team. So the 4 of us are all marine biologists. You're seeing on the left is Isabelle Coutet. She was our oldest team member. She was 61 at the time of the crossing. She was my PhD advisor at Simon Fraser University in British Columbia. I'm the 3rd one in. On either side of me are Noel and Lauren. They were my students at USF. They met in one of my classes some 8 or 9 years ago. And then they worked for me as TAs, and we stayed in contact throughout the years. And here we are crossing the Atlantic by rowboat together. So this is the challenge, was to row 3,000 miles unsupported, entirely on our own. So that means that we had to pack everything we needed for the entire crossing, all the food, all of the supplies that we needed. We left from La Gomera, the Canary Islands, and rode all the way, so off the coast of Africa, we rode all the way west to Antigua in the Eastern Caribbean. And the reason we did this, one, is because we like a good challenge, but also we raised funds for marine conservation. So there's 3 organizations in particular that we raised funds for. So all of the money that we raised, we're still raising, is split 3 ways between Shellback Expeditions, which is an organization that I started, that works mostly in the Eastern Caribbean, where we work with coastal communities there to collect data on coral reefs. So we survey coral reefs, collect good, valuable data that can be used in evidence-based marine management. Also the Benfield Marine Sciences Center, which is on Vancouver Island. It's an amazing facility where students can do field courses and learn how to do research and surveys and work in marine biology and marine conservation. And we're also supporting Green Wave, which is an organization based in Connecticut that works in sustainable seafood production. So we know that a lot of fish stocks are overfished. They work in agriculture, which is often done unsustainably. They develop techniques so that it can be done sustainably and train marine farmers. So this was a really massive undertaking, as you can imagine, and it took us about 3 years to prepare for this. And this was, you know, multiple different ways. We, of course, there's a physical training, so we spent a lot of time on rowing machines, which are really evil kinds of machines. I'm so happy to stop mine when I came back with the Atlantic. I love rowing. I don't like rowing on these things. We were training 10 to 14 hours a week on the physical training. We also trained in my coastal boat. A lot of it was logistics, fundraising, also things like where do you buy an ocean rowing boat? So you can see on the bottom left, you know, we located a team that raced a couple of years before us, bought their boat, had it shipped from Antigua. We're super stoked when that happened. We went to a lot of events. I met Rob at one of the events at Edgewater Park that where we had the boat. A lot of this was remote. It was really difficult. My teammates were in British Columbia and Alaska. I was here, the boat was here, so a lot of that happened over Zoom. So that was 3 years of a lot of Zoom, but here and there coming together for about a week at a time. And then last summer we did this massive push where the whole team moved to Dunedin. For 2 months, we had the boat on a lift at my friend's parents' condos in Dunedin, which was amazing. So we could just go really easily every morning to train. We did a lot of safety drills in the Gulf. We did a 36-hour row in July last year. There was no air conditioning on that boat, and those small cabins get very, very hot. That was really a lot of hard work. We're seeing the top middle, that was all the food laid out, all of the medicine. We went to Tampa to drop off our life raft. All of that happened last summer. And then we shipped the boat to La Gomera. So she took the easy way across the Atlantic on a big container ship. We took the easy way on airplanes. Met her in La Gomera. We had 2 weeks there to prepare for this race. You can see this was a race, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. So there were 38 boats. So all these boats are lined up. We're all preparing, unpacking the boat, getting inspected. What you see on the right here is all of our food laid out with Lauren and Isabel laid in the middle of all these Ziploc bags. That's 55 days worth of food for 4 people. Oops. And all of the safety gear. So the race people inspected the boat to make sure that we had everything we needed and that we're ready to use it properly. So a word on Emma. Emma was our boat. We didn't name her. She came to us called Emma. This was her 4th crossing, and she has always been Emma, so we kept that name. So she had gone across the Atlantic 3 times. We joked that she was the most experienced team member because she was the only one who had rowed across the Atlantic before. Though several of us, so Lauren and I had experience crossing oceans on sailboats, but it's a whole different deal on a very small rowing boat. Of course, the bigger she is, the more stuff you can carry for safety and food and comfort. But the bigger she is, the harder she is to row. So it's a really difficult balance. So this is all of the boat. Everything we needed for 55 days at sea was on that boat. On the stern on the left was the cabin that Lauren and I shared. On the right is the cabin that Isabel and Noel shared. The one on the left in the stern looks extra small. It was very small. We couldn't even fit entirely in that cabin. So the cabin actually extends under the rowing deck. That's where your legs go. So that's how tight it was. All of the food and equipment that we needed for the whole crossing was under the rowing deck. So there's rather tight hatches there. You can see that Lauren had 2 lines in her hands there. So we typically wouldn't row like this. This was just a training row in La Gomera. There are 3 rowing stations. So if need be, 3 people can row at a time, as long as all 3 rowing stations are functional. And that 4th person here is steering. Now, we also had an autopilot. So there's a rudder, there's an autopilot that we could attach. So that typically while offshore, you would just set the course and the autopilot would take you where you want it to be. But as needed, we could unhook that and use the lines that are also attached to the tiller and the rudder. We brought a lot of safety gear. So you can imagine when you're halfway in the middle of the Atlantic, no helicopters can reach you. So you are really on your own. So we had to be prepared for that. We had 3 different satellite phones to make sure that, you know, if 1 or even 2 of them break, we still have a 3rd one. We had a chart plotter. We had, which is of course hooked up to a GPS, we had a backup GPS, we had a 12-volt water maker, so the desalinator. And that was powered by our batteries, which were themselves powered by our solar panels. If that 12-volt water maker went and broke, we had a manual water maker. So the 12-volt water maker makes about 20 liters an hour. And you can only operate it in the middle of the day when you have the highest sun, because it really drained the batteries very, very quickly. The manual water maker made less than 1 liter an hour and required you to sit there and pump it. So that's not great times. We had, of course, a life raft in case there was a breach in the boat. But of course, if you're in a life raft, you have a real life or death emergency at that point. It's an immediate mayday to see if there's any vessels nearby that can pick you up. We had 4 different pairs of oars, and we had 5 autopilots. We knew that autopilots are one of the things that breaks the most, and we wanted to make sure that we were ready to swap out autopilot once as needed, because again, if that doesn't work, that means that in your non-rowing time, you have somebody needs to be there steering. So again, this was a race. It wasn't just us. That said, once we got started with the race, we never saw a boat again until we got, or not another boat in the race until we got to Antigua. So in this race, so you can see number 29 there, that's Emma. So this one was when all the boats had been launched in La Gomera, very close to departure dates. There were 38 teams that started the race. Out of those, 13 of them were all women's teams. And out of those 13 women's teams, 5 of those teams were women's 4, right? So 4 women in the boats. There's also several teams of 3 women, pairs, and there were, I think, 2 women that did that as solos. Now, for the pairs and the solos, they had slightly different boats. They were smaller boats. And so 3 years of preparation, and in the end, the race starts on December 13th. This was actually delayed by a day. There was really, so this year was an El Nino year. The weather was really difficult, and the race was set to start on December 12th. For the first time in 10 years, they had to modify that start date. At some point, we're told that we're going to leave 4 days early, which you can imagine there was a lot of scrambling in La Gomera at that point. And then we're told, no, actually the 12th seems good. And then we're told, no, the 13th is better, but you have a 2-day window to get away from the Canary Islands before weather turns extremely bad and it's going to be dangerous. They could be pushed back onto those islands. At least in open ocean, if you get pushed in the wrong direction, there's no land, so it's a little less dangerous. But this is December 13th, nearly 3 years after we decided to do the race. 3 years of preparation, so much safety considerations, so much training. You're just as ready as you can be, but still you go outside the marina with the sign that says 33,000 miles to go, and it's a very, very scary time at that point. And we did row into some pretty difficult conditions right off the bat. So I have a few videos here, and I'm expecting that it's likely going to slow down things a little bit. But let's see if we can. There you go. So I'm not going to show all of the videos, but one of the questions that I get is, what did you do at night? The answer is we kept rowing. So we're rowing around the clock, 2 people at a time. When we set off, extra difficult, there was no moon, so it was very dark at night, and that's some of the most difficult waves that we took were in the middle of the night because you can't see them coming. And we had several times where all hell's breaking loose. You're shouting for the people below to wake up and help you. One of those nights we called the night of horrors, where we had several big waves that were extremely scary, that broke. We broke an oar. No, not a big deal. We knew that was likely to happen. We have extra oars, but you can see on the left, what you're seeing is the oar lock. So in the back, you can see an oar that's actually in the oar lock. That's a pivot point, right? And in the foreground, you can see that oar lock on this metal plate that is bent about 45 degrees. That was 1/4-inch metal that just bent on 2 of these oar locks in a big wave in the middle of the night. We didn't know that was a thing. And we were told to bring extras of these outrigger plates, the metal bits. So we did not have an extra. At that point, that middle station was completely unusable. So we decided to do our best to make sure that we didn't render other rowing stations unusable. On the right, what you're seeing is the corner of our autopilot. About a week in, the autopilot started failing because the conditions were so massive that it just was working them too hard. So you can see all of this lashing line. What you don't see, there's also a hose clamp, but you don't see it. There's a little wrench in the back that's used as a splint because this thing was coming out of the pin. And we're at that point at least 5 weeks out from Antigua. And so that was going to be a really massive problem if the autopilot completely fell. And the problem here, very quickly, the pin from that one became seized into the mounting pin. So even though we had 4 extras, we couldn't change them. So again, a problem that we hadn't really seen coming, that we didn't know was a thing. We don't have footage of some of the worst conditions that we saw, but this is one example of the kind of waves we're seeing. And so you can see this one was a really scary one. And so before this wave happened, I'm eating my lunch, and Noel goes, big one, big wave. So we try to call out to be prepared for them. This one took our entire rudder out of the water. That was really scary. We thought there was a possibility of pitch pulling where the stern comes completely over the bow. That would have been super violent and super dangerous. These boats are made to capsize. They will self-right, but still there's a lot of potential injuries and extra problems that arise with that. So you don't want that to happen. So what we did at this point is we decided to deploy the drogue. So it's just like a little underwater parachute kind of thing to slow ourselves down and keep the stern in the water. But you can see even on the way to deploy it, there's still a lot of waves taking me down. Some people ask, why are you wearing life jackets? We did have life jackets. We wore them in these very big conditions at night, but even more important than floating, because if you're floating in the middle of the ocean, it's not going to help you that much unless you're tethered to the boat. And so we all had these harnesses at all times. We're always attached to the boat. And you might see on our waist, we have these little yellow devices. Those are personal locator beacons. So if somebody were to become separated from the boat, you could locate them that way. But the most important thing was to never become detached from the boat, hence the harnesses and the tethers at all times. And so a few days later, this was probably 4 days in, and by deploying the drogue, by the way, this is a race, right? We slowed ourselves down. At that point, we had been in first position for women. We slowed ourselves down. We lost the first place position, but that was the best decision because it was the safest decision. A few days later, I come on deck and the boat is listed to one side. It turns out the water maker compartment had been completely flooded with seawater. What you're seeing on the left is the heavily corroded electrical components of that 12-volt water maker, completely unusable at that point. So we switched to manual water making. So in our off shifts from rowing, we would sit there and pump water. We each took one of those shifts a day. And then Lauren took the lead on rebuilding the pump. We had a spare pump. We had enough electrical components to rebuild all of the electrical components to this pump. She spent about 3 or 4 days in our cabin, sweating, rebuilding that. By the way, stern cabin, where your feet have to go under the rowing deck. Now we also had the water maker to snuggle with to keep it from the waves. It was too dangerous, of course, to do this on deck. We were lost all kinds of parts. So she had to sweat in the cabin to rebuild it there. And 5 days later, we installed it and it worked. So that was amazing. So the first 10 days of the race were incredibly intense. And then comes Christmas. We had this Christmas present of calmer weather. On the left, you see Noel laying down on deck on our mattress. Our mattresses were sopping wet with salt water at that point. Christmas time, we got a chance to air them out on deck. You can imagine that, finishing a rowing shift and sleeping on saltwater mattress is not amazing. So we had a bit of a reprieve, dried out the cabins a little bit. They stayed salty, so they stayed wet for the whole duration of the race after that. We brought some little liquid chocolates. We had Christmas presents. We got a bit of a reprieve. But also with the calmer weather, of course, we were so excited to have calmer weather at that point, but it got way too cold. So then we realized that when there is no waves pushing you in the right direction, you have to row every foot of distance. And not just we had no winds pushing us in the right direction at that point, we had winds slightly against us. And that was extremely hard. So we went from going a maximum of, I think, 96 nautical miles in one day to 23 just a few days later. Noel, who's behind me, so I'm in the red here, Noel's behind me, did the calculation in our cabin to see if we averaged 23 nautical miles from now, how long is it going to take us, which was not a great time, not a great answer. You can also see it's very cloudy at that point. The sun charged our solar panel. That was really critical. So without our solar panels refilling our batteries, we didn't have enough power for the water maker. So what you're seeing here is, again, me rowing in the front. You can see 2 red lines leading to my foot. So we actually unhooked the autopilot and I had to use my foot that could pivot back and forth to control the boat. So, you know, you're going backwards, you're trying to look at the compass that's right there, which does not have a light that works. So we could use the compass at night. So during the day, we could do this to try to foot steer. That was really difficult mentally because you're super tired, right? So that requires a huge amount of focus. Now it does get, you know, I'm showing you some of the hardest times. I'm gonna actually skip this and go a little bit further here. So, you know, we also got time for music. We're hanging out, and here we have this amazing private dolphins that came and swam with us. They were there for at least a half an hour, just hanging out. My 3 teammates got to jump in the water, swim with them, and on deck, they were just doing this amazing jumping back and forth. So we also had moments like that that were truly, truly amazing. And I want to end with, I think this is my last video, to show you some of, this is what the kind of ocean rowing we're after. This is the conditions that we got in the last 10 days or so. So starting big waves, you know, windy, but you can see the wind with the flag smoke pushing us in the right direction. This is the best kind of ocean rowing. Not crazy, scary waves, but big waves where you can surf down them. By the way, rowing here in the Gulf, you might row at 3-4 miles an hour, you know, in that kind of boat. When you have the wave, the waves, you know, pushing you, and sometimes we could surf down the waves, we went as fast as 17 knots. So, you know, those waves and wind are really helping you. So this is the best kind of conditions, and that's how we finish the race. So I want to give you a little bit of like, what did it look like really day to day? And I have the screen here in the middle of my chart, but the answer is all we did really day to day is eat, sleep, row was the main thing, right? So we rowed in 2-hour shifts. And what I have here is 6 a.m. to sit at the top, 6 p.m. at the bottom. And you can see that Isabel and Noel, they shared the bow cabin. So they always alternated. They never rowed together. Lauren and I shared a cabin. We alternated, never rowed together. Want to show you that we offset when we switched our shifts, so that I rowed half my time with Isabel, half my time with Noel. During the day, we went 2 on, 2 off. So 2 hours of rowing, 2 hours of everything else. And at night, we switched to 3 on and 3 off. So at best, we could sleep for 2.5 hours at a time. You can see the middle here is Noel chilling in the forward cabin. We hardly ever had the hatch open. That was dangerous. So all the hatches were closed at all times. And I'm here rehydrating a meal. That's the kind of meals that we ate. And of course, eat, sleep, and row, and do everything else, which means, you know, make water, take care of the water maker, clean up. We always have these fish that would land on the deck at night. It got disgusting with flying fish scales and scum, and so you have to clean up. Also, the navigation, which was a lot. We have to look at the, you know, we want to go in the straightest line possible, though of course, you know, bending to take advantage of currents and wind. What you can see here is the forward part of the aft cabin, where we actually in dry erase markers started going, you know, writing down where we wanted to be at every change of shift. Our autopilot, because there was so much give in it, because it was starting to break down, wasn't holding a true course. And so we would say, all right, we want to go here. And 1 minute it's going, you know, 20 degrees above, 30 minutes later, it's going 20 degrees below. So we actually had to be very active at counter correcting that. And so that's what you do on a daily basis. And then you also have these things that don't happen on a daily basis, but happen here and there. You can't really see, but at the top right is Noel in the water scraping the hull. So we jump in about every week or so. This is on the bottom here is Lauren and I getting ready to jump in for a shower and a scrape. We were always attached to the boat. Again, being detached from the boat was the worst thing that could happen. So you just jump in, but always had our line bring you back to the boat. On the left is Christmas. We had a Secret Santa. We all had packable presents for one other person. While I was at sea, I mean, we passed Christmas, New Year's, my daughter's birthday. So we took a photo here. I called her on the satellite phone to wish her a happy birthday. But those things, of course, didn't happen very often. You saw the big waves at the beginning. It was a whole 10 days before we could get in the water for a true shower, to, you know, shampoo and do that scrape. Otherwise, we just clean ourselves up as we sponge bath in our cabins. And we packed 4 little bottles of bubbly to share between the 4 of us on special occasions. That included Lauren's birthday. This was a no big cheesecake that Noel made in her cabin, sweated for an hour making that for Lauren's birthday on January 17th. We celebrated New Year's, and also you really celebrate the milestones. This is when our sharp water got to under 1,000 nautical miles, 999.9 nautical miles to go. You know, all of those big things were big, moments to celebrate. We didn't put the end waypoint from the beginning because that's just mentally just too difficult to like get 3,000 miles to go and then 2,999 nautical miles to go. So we didn't do that. We put it at around 1,100 and then starting to see the, every 100 shift toward the end was really mentally amazing. With the wildlife, it was sort of the same thing. We had the daily visitors, which include the flying fish, the tuna, so much tuna that came with us. The storm petrels also were there almost every day, but then here and there you had the dolphins and the whales or the squids that also would land on deck. So that also would be like sort of, the daily occurrences and then the very rare visitors. And then after 38 days at sea, we get to Antigua, and amazingly, we're the first women's team. So we ended up taking the women's cup, and this was not a given. First, we're not rowers. We all learned to row to do this. We're not the fastest rowers at all. In flat conditions, other teams had the advantage on us, but we were really experienced offshore people, and that's how we ended up winning, is really strategy and taking advantage of the conditions. For a good chunk, I know some people who had, seen me talk last year were following on the app and following. There was another women's team that ended up coming in to get 20 hours behind us. In the middle of the Atlantic, there was a time where we were less than 2 nautical miles away from them. We talked to them on the VHF, even though we never saw them. And we played leapfrog with them for about 1,000 nautical miles, which was crazy. But in the end, we did beat them by less than a day. And so this is what the whole crossing looked like. And of course, it's not a straight line. You kind of curve down, take advantage of the conditions, but we actually curved down less this year because of conditions and what is typically done. We had the super fast conditions at the beginning. You can see the big squiggly bit, that's when we had the winds against us. It was super, super slow. The last dash is when we had the great conditions. And so a lot of what I'm asked here is, that was, what did you learn in the Atlantic? And first off, you can see that my team, this is right after we finished the seconds after we finished the race, which was amazing. First off, it was scary out there. It was really, really scary. So it's easy to just get lost and get paralyzed with fear. And the bottom line is, yeah, you're going to be scared. You have to acknowledge, okay, I'm very scared right now, but what can I do? And so, what it came down to for me was control what you can control, right? Be as prepared as you can be, have all of the parts, have all of the training. That's, you're controlling the controllables, and that minimizes the risk of disaster. And then from there, just stay calm as you work it out, right? That's the best you can do. There's no turning back. I'm often asked, do you want to turn back? And the answer is, from 100 miles from La Gomera, there is no turning back. The winds are against you. By 200 miles, no helicopter can reach you, and that's it. You just have to commit to it. Your attitude. Show up with the best attitude possible. Shift, that's your shift. I like to say that the difference between an ordeal and an adventure is your attitude. And so no matter how tired you are, I mean, I had this repeated a dream that, when I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and I had to go on shift, and I had been dreaming that we're in like a mirror about to get going, and I'd wake up and go, I'm here, I have to be on deck. But all you can do is just wipe that, just hop on deck and have a smile and crack a joke and start rowing. Your team. I did this as a team of 4 people. Your team is everything. They're your life support. They're your people. I talked to one solo rower in La Gomera, and I was like, dude, you're rowing this by yourself. Respect. He was like, you're rowing this with other people. And that's great. Like those people, there's the possibility of real strife and real problems. And at the end of the day, and there's also the possibility of I want this and you want this. At the end of the day, what is the best decision for your team is what's the best decision for you. And we didn't have a lot of disagreements because, right, like if your team is falling apart, it's going to be a problem. I had one teammate who had a massive depressive episode out there. She was extremely scared. She struggled. It was the hardest for her out of anybody. So we supported her extra because that was what was best for her. Also, what was best for us. Her turning suicidal wasn't going to help anybody. So, think about the team is super important. And as a team, we had done a lot of work with a mental coach to come up with our shared goal. And so we had one, get across safely. Two, have the best time doing it. It's gonna be hard at times, it's not always gonna be fun, but have the most fun possible doing it. And three, go fast. So go fast was after safety and after looking at for one another. But, you know, at the end, when it came time to like, are we making this decision? Let's try to win. Like, oh, we've met goals number 1 and 2. Now we go fast. Now we try to win this thing, right? And there were other times where it's like, no, safety first. Drone is coming out, even if it costs us the race. So having that very purposeful a mission that we had come across as a team was super important. And we raised a ton of money. Our goal was $500,000. We're not quite there, but that's still a lot of money. I'm really proud of us. I know I'm basically out of time. I just want to let you know, Salty Science still accepting donations for the next year. If you want to donate, please do. That'd be awesome. Our website is amazing. But also Shellback Expeditions going forward. That's the nonprofit that I started, where I'm taking students to the Caribbean and showing them how to conduct field research. And we're teaming up with local partners. And so I'm always looking for sponsors. If you think that's a good fit for your organization, give me a shot for sure. We're putting some stuff on social media still, and there's a documentary being made about our crossing called Multitude of Drops. So keep an eye out for that. So many mile sponsors, several mile sponsors from this room here. Thank you so much. Thank you to the corporate sponsors that also supported this. And I'm sorry I went over the. Great question. I had cross oceans on sailboats before, never rowed. Yeah, same with my entire team. Nobody had done this.
About that team, about growing a team and relying on your team members and kind of problem solving.
Yeah, that's I haven't been asked to do that talk specifically, but that was such a big aspect of it. And that's one that's easy to see, or because you're so focused on, I have to be prepared physically, I have to train, I have to be prepared for the navigation and the safety at sea. And it's easy to just let that slide, but that was such an important element of it. And working with that coach was so good to have the right mindset to work as a team. And I'm so glad that we did that. And you see a lot of teams that step off the boat and never talk again. They're in a really bad place. And so, and I'm not going to tell you that it was all rainbows and unicorns every minute of the crossing, right? But for the most part, we really, I'm really proud of us and how we supported them.
We find that with boards.
I think there's a lot of parallels,
Yeah.
and of course there's no walking away, and you're in a very small boat together, so it kind of accelerates all those potential problems, but also I think the solutions.
Thank you. Was there an overall rescue protocol? I mean, who was actually?
So the race organizers have a sailboat that kind of hangs back in like a mast, just a little bit late, and is there if teams get into trouble, they can try to get to them. But that boat could be a week away from you. Very quickly, the boat split. The fast people go, the winners this year, I think, took 35 days. The slowest people took maybe 72, 76 days. So you can imagine how spread apart the fleet is. And once we got in pretty quick, after us, there was all kinds of bad weather. We're going backwards in the wrong direction. So no, there isn't somebody ready to swoop in at any time. There's a team this year called Aussie Old Salts, and I'm going to put this here. He is. This man here, Alistair Potts. You can see all the boats here in the tracks. There's a boat that looks like it stayed in the middle of the Atlantic. He had a heart attack and he died at sea. And his team called a mayday. There's nothing they could have done. It's nothing that they did that precipitated his death, but they called a mayday. They got rescued a few days later by a container ship. They headed to Norway on a container ship. And so if you get really into a life or death situation, last year a team had to abandon their boat that did not sound right. They were in a life raft. They were in a life raft for 16 hours and they got rescued. So yeah, it's the danger. It's not pretend risk. There is a risk, and it's well managed risk, but it happens. Yeah, and this is a reminder, right? That getting to the other side is not a given. we're really grateful that we were able to make it safely across and pass it across.
One more. Will you do it again?
Did I get that? I was out a lot. So there's a race in the Pacific. Same organizers so the race leaves, Monterey Bay, California, goes to Hawaii. And there's, this woman, Liz Morley, who was a solo in this year's Atlantic race. She signed up to do it. So she's going back to back. So she's heading back out to sea, in June. I don't think I'm ever going to sign up for this again. The question is, would you do this again? If you put me back in December, November, knowing what I know, and this year was exceptionally difficult. The weather was horrendous. And it was so hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I would still do it again. I'm glad I did this. I'm so glad I did it with my team. I'm so glad how it turned out despite the difficulties. But it was 3 years of my life preparing for this. There's so many great things to be done. I want to take on other challenges.